All right, welcome to The Explainer, where we get right into the source material. And today, man, have we got something for you. We're about to crack open a playbook for power that's over 2,000 years old, but you're going to see it feels like it was written just yesterday. So, is there a 2,000-year-old guide to modern geopolitics? I mean, that's a pretty bold question, right? But the answer, well, it might just be yes. We're diving into this incredible ancient Indian manuscript, and honestly, it reads like a modern manual for running a country, for military strategy, and, just surviving in a pretty dangerous world.
So what is this thing? It's called the Artha Sastra, and it is, no exaggeration, a masterclass in how to run a state, how to grab power, and how to play the giant, complex game of international relations. The author, a guy named Kautilya, was an advisor to an emperor, and let me tell you, he was brilliant, but he was also completely ruthless. This isn't some dusty, theoretical book. This is the real deal. Okay, so let's get into the first big idea here. What's the core philosophy driving this whole ancient playbook? It really all boils down to one single foundational concept. Kautilya says material well-being is supreme. And for him, everything, and I mean everything, starts with something called Artha. That basically means material prosperity, wealth, economic power. He's saying, look, forget morality, forget ideology for a second. The number one job of a state is to be rich and economically secure. Because everything else you care about, your culture, your philosophy, your way of life, all of it depends on that foundation. Okay, so if the main goal is material well-being, how do you get it? Well, back then, the main source of wealth was land. Pretty simple. So the conclusion is kind of unavoidable, isn't it? A state has to constantly seek to grow, to acquire more land. And this single piece of logic leads to a really stark, really intense principle that shapes literally everything Kautilya talks about. And here's the startling premise. Your immediate neighbors, they are your natural enemies. Why? Well, the logic is brutally simple. You want to expand, and guess what? So do they. You're both fighting for the same limited resources, the same land. So conflict isn't just a possibility. Kautilya says it's inevitable. It's a really sobering, kind of cold way to look at the world. Yeah, this kind of cold, hard logic puts Kautilya right in what we call the realist school of thought. You've probably heard of other thinkers like this, China's Sun Tzu with The Art of War, or Italy's Machiavelli. These are the guys who have a super pragmatic, unsentimental view of power. For them, and definitely for Kautilya, the number one goal is the survival and prosperity of your state. How you get there, well, that's kind of secondary. All right, section 2, the anatomy of power. So if your whole state is built for expansion and competition, how do you actually structure it on the inside to make it work? Well, Kautilya had a very, very specific model in mind. And it all revolves around the number 7. He called it the Sapdanga theory. And the idea is that a strong, successful state is like a living body, and it's made up of 7 essential limbs or elements. So here they are: the king, ministers, territory and people, forts, treasury, army, and allies. But here's the key thing. This isn't just some checklist. Kautilya saw these as totally interdependent parts of a single organism. If just one of these limbs is weak, like say your treasury is empty or your army's morale is shot, the entire seat, the whole body, suffers. At the center of it all, you have the king, the Swami. He's the brain of the whole operation. But, and this is super important, Kautilya warns, a single wheel cannot turn the chariot of the state. So a king who gets arrogant and thinks he can do it all by himself, he's absolutely doomed to fail. He needs all those other parts to work. And when it came to his ministers, the amatyas, he had some, let's just say, creative methods for making sure they were loyal. He basically suggested these ruthless integrity tests. Get this, a spy would go up to a minister and whisper something like, "Hey, the queen is in love with you. She'll help you get rid of the king and you can have the throne." I mean, talk about a brutal way to test someone's character, but probably pretty effective. And this is where you see the fascinating balance in his thinking. On the one hand, he says, in the happiness of the subjects lies the happiness of the king. He knew you had to care for your people, the Janapada, because a happy, productive population makes the state strong. But at the very same time, he's advising the king to set up this massive network of spies to watch everyone, monitor public opinion, and crush any hint of rebellion before it even gets started. It's that mix of care and control. Okay, so you've built a strong state internally. Now, how do you look at the world outside your borders? This is where Kautilya's thinking gets really, really geopolitical. Let's talk about the circle of enemies. He came up with this idea called the mandala theory. And to get it, I want you to picture the world map. But don't see it as flat. Instead, imagine it's a series of concentric circles, like ripples in a pond. And your kingdom is right there in the middle of it all.
The theory is based on that idea we talked about earlier. Your neighbor is your enemy. But it goes a step further. Your neighbor's neighbor? They're your natural friend. It's that classic idea, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And what this creates is this constantly shifting chessboard of alliances and rivalries. There are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. There are only permanent interests. The country that's your ally today could be your biggest rival tomorrow if things change.
And Kautilya even identified other key players on this global chessboard. You've got what he called the Udasin. These are powerful but distant, neutral countries that you just have to keep an eye on. And then you have the Majjhima, or buffer states. A perfect modern example is Nepal or Bhutan, sandwiched between the huge powers of India and China. These little states can be absolutely crucial for keeping the big guys from clashing directly.
So this all sounds great in theory, but how does the king actually do anything in this complicated world of friends and enemies? Well, Kautilya wasn't just a philosopher. He gave leaders a practical, hands-on toolkit. He laid out 4 main strategies, which he called the upayas. First, you can try sama, conciliation, just making peace. If that doesn't work, you can try dhamma, using gifts, maybe economic concessions. Still no luck? Then you move to danda, force and punishment, war. And then there's the 4th, and maybe the most clever one, beta. This is the art of sowing discord, of dividing your enemies and getting them to fight each other. You weaken them from the inside out.
But wait, there's more. He went even deeper with a 6-fold policy. Think of it like a strategic calculator. You ask yourself, is my enemy stronger than me? Okay, then you choose sandhi, make peace, and just wait for a better time. Are you stronger? Great, then it's time for vigraha, war. It's incredibly detailed, even covering things like dvaibhava. That's making peace with one enemy just so you can focus all your firepower on another one. It's pure strategic thinking. Which brings us to our final section, Kautilya's enduring legacy. So why are we talking about this? Why does a text written on palm leaves, literally thousands of years ago, still feel so relevant today? Well, for one thing, it totally challenges the idea that this kind of strategic thinking is just a Western thing. For centuries, when people talked about geopolitics and realism, they mostly talked about European thinkers. The Artha Sastra is this powerful, ancient, and totally non-Western way of looking at the exact same stuff, the balance of power, national interest, and that constant struggle between nations. And let's be honest, the key takeaways just feel incredibly modern. Power is rooted in material well-being, check. Geopolitics is a constant struggle for an edge, double check. A strong country on the inside is the key to having power on the outside, yep. And that you need to be pragmatic, flexible, and a realist. I mean, these are the very ideas being debated right now in foreign policy circles and war colleges all over the world. So after 2,300 years, have the fundamental rules of power really changed? I mean, sure, our world is all about drones and crypto, not chariots and gold coins. The technology is completely different. But what about the human drivers? The desire for security, for prosperity, for getting an advantage over your rivals? Have those changed at all? And that's the final question to leave you with. Maybe, just maybe, we're all still living in Kautilya's world.